we have our next fireside chat, and that is investing in immersive ecosystems, gaming projects, potential and challenges. And so please join me as I welcome our speakers to the stage. We have Sébastien Borget, co-founder of the Sandbox, and we have our moderator, Omar Rahim, founder of Arena 2. Welcome on stage, guys. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi everyone, hope you're well. Thank you for joining us for this session. Should be very interesting. I think we have here Sébastien Borget from Sandbox, who many of you will know, having seen multiple cycles. I'm Omar Rahim, founder of a company called Arena 2, also in the gaming space. And we're here to talk about I suppose, the investment climate for this industry now. So we're going to jump straight in. And maybe, Sébastien, you can talk to us a little bit about, we've been involved now for multiple cycles. What do you think the climate is like now for these sort of immersive world products?
So that's a broad question. As you know, I've been Sandbox has existed since 2011, first as a mobile game, and then went into blockchain in 2018. So indeed, we've seen quite something, but we've always been pioneers into adopting new technology. And the first thing that's driving those investment cycles usually is the core technology. There is an evolution that's either coming from smartphone that gives birth to new possibilities, new gameplays to developer, or blockchain that initially launched basically digital ownership, the fact that you could have digital asset on chain that represents your content, your identity with avatars, and even your currencies with tokens. But in these phases, usually there's also a lot of experimentation. The business models are actually not established already, so you don't know what will work or will not work. So it's more failure, trial, and error. And that's what we've seen. We've seen since between 2018 and today, different ways that games and the immersive world have tried to monetize and retain their user, from launching pre-sales of digital assets such as virtual land, avatars, launching their own token even before the product was there, so sometimes too early. And then the evolution of play to earn with its, I would say, rise, death, and rebirth in a certain way. And now new models that are, I think, more sustainable in the sense that the developers are prioritizing into launching games and product first, and then introducing monetization and making sure they are not just distributing tokens as a way of user acquisition in a massive way without any plan for then making sure that the user who receives those tokens will stay long enough to contribute to the economy of those games. And a big picture of where we are on blockchain gaming, people might think NFTs is dead, metaverse is dead. We are far from it. Actually, blockchain gaming has been growing. It's bigger than it has ever been, but it's more fragmented as well, based on different chains and ecosystems. So we are no longer into one dominant chain, which was Ethereum. We're into there's Stone, there's Ronin, there's Aptos, there's Swiss, there's Sai, there's a lot of choices for Solana, for example. So all those apps and games, they exist into fragmented ecosystem where right now there's not much liquidity and distribution spawning across. So if you are sticking into one, you might not see everything happening anywhere else.
No, absolutely. Very interesting. And I think you've probably got more data than a lot of other projects in this space, given how long you've been around and sort of the different cycles that you've seen. We probably have a lot of game developers here. And you touched upon this point earlier about timing, particularly around converting Web 2 users to Web 3. How did you find that journey of pulling in a native Web 3 audience versus converting Web 2 audiences and introducing to blockchain gaming?
So I think the moment where people just come for the technology, the benefit of the technology itself, discovering about blockchain, crypto, asset ownership, is gone. So basically, we are now more into a phase where the industry is more mature. The gameplays have to be better, more fun, meaning more entertaining, but also making people willing to spend to keep playing those games. And people don't come for the innovation of the technology alone. They come for the content that's built upon that. So what's the great experience? Whether it's a high graphic, a high realistic graphic kind of game, or it's a more social game, it's a more fun gameplay. where is the innovation that digital asset ownership is empowering beyond just like the ability to move your assets, sell them, and so on. So this is a side feature. I think also like if you look, we're already over 5 years in the space. Technology has matured a lot, giving better UX, better user experience. So people are no longer complaining about the fact that MetaMask or any wallet, which is now like mostly like email based, is creating friction. But just saying like your asset is on chain is not going to drive more value for the user, specifically as it will become like normalized. It's like saying, oh, my game is 3D now. So what? Like every game will be in 3D now, like, or my game has in-app purchase. That's not a core innovation that's sufficient to drive a long-term user acquisition. So you have to think of strategy, you have to leverage network effect, you have to leverage this idea that games are no longer just single products or even neither services, meaning like they keep being run with live ops, with seasonal updates, DLC, and so on. Games are platforms. That means like they are enabling ecosystem of people to contribute either by playing and sharing like streamers, by acquiring new users like community, guilds, ambassadors, etc. People who are now user-generated content game where like players are contributing by adding characters, levels, modes that evolve constantly the gameplay, and are even able to build their own business and be sustainable of it, like Sandbox or Roblox or Fortnite, for example, or they are now able to contribute to the economy of the game by like helping, for example, on like the liquidity of certain assets, like the currencies, by staking, for example, and so on. So there's a combination of elements that for me is really gearing toward like the future of gaming, where it's not just about like the core product, but it's everything you build around it.
Yeah, and talking about sort of user retention, how did Sandbox really address the issue of creating content versus working with existing IP and pulling in users that way?
So there's like a fine balance, right? It's like we've been one of the leading projects in Web3. We brought over 8 million users to have a wallet and play in the metaverse. We have had over 400 major brands partnership, including the likes of Snoop Dogg, Warner Music, Attack on Titan, Casio G-Shock, and many, many others globally. And those brands, they were essential to create the initial traction, as well to onboard their fans and their audience to say, oh, I can create a game with my favorite celebrity, or I can play as my favorite celebrity as an avatar into games. And that's something new that was not found in any other platform. Like, there's no single game where you can make a game with a Smurf or Snoop Dogg and combine, or even Jurassic World, combine them and publish that on the map. So that's the innovation. The blockchain came as an additional feature behind. Now, like we're moving to, after having partnered with so many brands, we are moving more toward like, let's go full UGC, because we've proven that what brands can do. And like the idea is like we were using the brand as well to inspire the creator. Being able to make the game with your favorite character is what drives you first in the platform, but afterwards it's like the game jams, the contests, the community, the features of the product and the core technology, and more importantly the distribution you get by being present on the platform that will make you want to keep building on the platform and make your own game. So we launched 6 seasons so far, so over 5 years. And we announced like last month, like all the future season will have not just 50-50 brick brand versus UGC, they will have 90% UGC, 10% brand. So now it's the moment we are giving to the communities their chance to be featured with their best creation. We are running a game jam called Retro Game Jam right now. So you have 2 months to create a game on Sandbox and be featured to be in front of hundreds of thousands of millions of users with your best creation.
Fantastic. So that's great advice there for any game developers that we see here. I mean, sounds like we can go and build games already for the next couple of months in the Sandbox. So that's a great opportunity out there. And on that subject, you know, I've tried to go around and play as many games as I can here. What advice would you give game developers now in terms of the investment climate for investment into this space? What does that look like? You obviously speak to a lot of people investing in this space. What is the feeling right now? What's hot?
So first of all, I think it's not specific to blockchain gaming. Like gaming is one of the hardest industry in the world. Out of like 10 games in development, 6 will never be launched. Like they will be killed in between the development. And out of the 4 that left that will be launched, only one of them will still be alive after a year or 2 years with live ops. The rest will die out of revenue and so on. Highly competitive industry. The blockchain adds an extra complexity with the token, the management of an economy, and so on. Capital-wise or investment-wise, it's been drying down, not just because of like the lack of interest in gaming, but just because of the world and the market situation right now, where like investors, they didn't generate returns on the past cycle, so they don't have new money to redeploy. And we don't have time to comment on the general macro of the market, but there's a lot of uncertainties that do not put, like many investors will bet on like other technologies, AI and so on, while they're waiting to see what's happening within the blockchain climate. That means for developers, you have to be more resourceful. When like funding is drying, you have less capacity to waste time, to not deliver or focus on the monetization right away. So you have to launch product faster, and thanks to AI, you can do that. You can develop much faster a game. You're no longer constrained with the content, the animation, the art, or even like the vibe coding. You need smaller teams, so be more nimble. Focus on like, as soon as you launch a product, make sure you have a core user community that's here for the product and start monetizing it as well. So the traditional model of almost any game company or startup, like MVP, validate the core gameplay is entertaining at day one retention, and then prove that like people are willing to pay to keep playing, which is the best measure of like the retention and engagement for like sustainable businesses.
Yeah, I think on that point, one of the things that I've seen is often game developers are very shy to present their revenue because it's very small, whereas I think you made a great point there that the fact that someone's willing to spend money on an asset in a game is already probably puts you in the top 10% of developers straight away. So one of the things that we constantly try and emphasize is don't be shy if your revenue is very small. The fact that you've got someone to part with $1 or $5 is already pretty impressive. And something you mentioned earlier
in crypto is not even $5. Yeah. Some of the user, once they're hooked, they're ready to spend $100 to $1,000 to be a holder in the economy and play. So that's the interesting part where like the financialization is opening new gates, and you don't need to have millions of users. A few hundred to 1,000 highly engaged, high LTV users is sufficient to get started. But comes the next challenge, user acquisition and distribution. And that's also where right now, like the fragmentation of the ecosystem and some of like Web3 is a lot about network effect. The fact that we are stakeholder in asset allows us to like basically grow natively into ecosystem. But it's not been true. Sometimes games work harder to bring users to the chains than chains work hard to bring users to the games. In a traditional model, when you publish a game on the App Store, the Apple actually, they sell device, they deliver new users and install to you. Yes, they take 30% and it's not Web3 based, but that's at least one value add. So pick the right ecosystem that support your creativity and going to bring new users, because that's the key. At the end, without the distribution, you're not likely to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on NFTs earlier on. I wanted to pick up something while we have time on NFTs. It's become very unfashionable in the last couple of years, but I think you made an excellent point that it's probably the most interesting I've ever seen the market for NFTs right now, because people are figuring out that you can do so much with NFTs. They may not necessarily be called NFTs, but the ability to have a tradable asset that has some sort of value and utility is more powerful than ever, it seems.
For me, there's no world where like your content online, whether in games, etc., will not be on the chain. So digital asset ownership, it should be like a fundamental right, property rights, specifically as we work moving toward like a more digital world and digital economies. However, like all NFTs are not bound to succeed. Like the one that have real utility in games, and like you as a gamer, you know like if I play X hours with this asset, if I upgrade it, for example, I'm likely to earn more resource, which could be variable. That's the one that we call yield-bearing assets that can actually justify for you to spend time or like a purchase of $50, $100, sometimes more of crypto, and hold. And many of those NFTs, they will sustain time and they will have probably an interoperability value. But the one that are, if you're still thinking NFT as a model, like I launch a collection, it's just collectible and it's going to sell out, it's already a model of the past. Something doesn't need to sell out to be constantly of value, actually.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We have a very little time left, unfortunately. I wish we had more time to discuss. It's been so interesting. I think the final question from me is, we've talked a lot from the perspective of game developers, and you've given some really, really useful advice there. What about from the other side, from an investment perspective? Many people like me are Web3 investors and are looking for projects to invest. What are the telltale signs to give us a sort of the maximum chance of, or maximum probabilities that a project is going to deliver value?
Well, it's always about the team, like their ability to deliver like the product or not. Do they already have a product? Are they keen to soft launch an MVP of their product to measure data and understand like whether they are on the right track, they understood the right go-to-market and audience or not? And then you look at, okay, if they have a token or NFTs, like what's their interest? Is their interest aligned with the rest of their community and users, meaning like they are ready to take the strongest lockup or vesting or schedule, or they are ready to postpone the launch of their token until like it's the right time, or they are like trying to fast track it and take any kind of investor money at any cost and any price, which will come in a detrimental way to both you as an investor, but more importantly to the community of players. And that's unfortunately this kind of, I would call him, not necessarily bad actor, but actors that have created this negative prism around like the state of around the industry, and that's been hurting the trust and confidence of players and other actors in the ecosystem.
Really useful advice there. Unfortunately, guys, we're out of time, but I think it's been an incredibly useful, albeit brief session. We have lots more to learn from Sandbox, so we'll be watching the developments very closely. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.